Olduğunca olduran, gönüllerimiz iman nuruyla dolduran, Yüce Allah adına 99 sayılı.
Merhaba kardeşler, ben Haris.
Ben Akif ve siz görürsünüz Reaksiyon Chamber.
And welcome to another video of Reaction Chamber. Today we are going to give reaction on video that explains the War of Independence of Turkey. The World War II in which the enemies attacked on Turkey from all sides. Turkish fought till the last drop of their blood. So let's see the history.
Yeah, let's see what they did in their history, and let's see how did they fought for their country. So let's start.
The Turkish War of Independence.
Okay.
19th century was a time when so much changed in the world. One of these important
19th
was the
century.
gradual destruction of empires. One of these collapsed empires was the Ottoman Empire. When the Ottomans were defeated in the First World War, like many other empires, they made their exit from the stage of history. For the victors of the First World War, Anatolia and the Middle East now were suitable areas for colonization. They also entered the territory of Anatolia after the Mondros Armistice Agreement signed by the defeated
This is
party
the
on
place
30th
where,
of
This
October.
all place was of
The first
Ottoman Empire.
occupation took place
All
at
those
the
places
place of
depend
the
was
acquisition of
in Ottoman
Moscow, and
Empire
Turkey's
region.
invasion has accelerated step by step. The British, the French, and the Italians seized many places, particularly
Okay.
the Straits.
They want to
The British
enter-
Italian entered the Ottoman Empire and they took a lot of places.
Communication and
And
transportation
they
of
want
the
to
Turkish
destroy
government
Ottoman
and the
Empire.
arms of the
Yeah.
army were confiscated, and
This
they
is the
were
fourth of Ottoman
demobilized and
Empire.
withdrawn.
Yeah,
The
Osmanlı.
purpose of these operations was to prevent a rebellion from the Turkish people, Turkish government, or army, while the occupations continued.
Okay.
The French invaded Çukurova
They are ready
and the
to
western
fight.
part of the southeast with the Armenian legions. The British seized the Straits, important raw material points and ports.
British were
Also,
coming from
Italians
there,
marched
France
on
was
the
coming
south
from
and west
here.
coast of Anatolia. Additionally, the Entente states were also considering to establish a large Armenian state in the east and a Kurdish state in the southeast. They
So
promised Greece
Armenians were also
Anatolia,
struggling and they were planning to get their own country.
disturbed by the occupations had already expressed their attitude towards
They are
the
one
enemy
and
in the
they are
southern
five.
regions and began to
Yeah.
fight with the French and Armenians. On the other hand, the situation that mobilized the country in general was on May 15, 1919, when the Greeks stepped
May
into
15,
Izmir.
1919.
That seemed to be the red
The
line.
Greece,
The
the
occupation was
the
protested
Greeks
all over
entered
the
in
world.
Izmir
The
city.
British were trying to
Izmir is
counter
a
the
very big
Istanbul
city.
government by saying that the occupation was temporary. During
And
the
they occupied
occupation,
this
experienced
area.
commanders of the country held secret meetings in Istanbul. The favorite of these commanders was Mustafa Kemal Pasha, who was remembered for his achievements.
Mustafa
in
Kemal
Çanakkale.
Pasha.
Mustafa Pasha, as a
Çanakkale, he was the person
a
who
brilliant general.
won the fight of
In
Çanakkale.
the First World War. Mustafa Kemal Pasha, one of the army's most active commanders on the battlefield, and the rest commanders of the
Yeah.
Ottoman Empire did not favor silence against these invasions, and during the reorganization of the remaining Ottoman army, Mustafa Kemal was sent to Samsun on May 16, 1919, as an inspector.
He was
Mustafa Kemal Pasha
sent to that
set
Samsun
Samsun
place.
on May 19,
Okay.
with his trusted friends and officers, knew that the fire of freedom within the Turkish people would lead them back to independence. On 19th
Because they
May,
wanted freedom
Turkey
from
began to implement
Greeks,
the
from
plan of
British,
liberation.
from French, and from Armenians.
Expansion of the occupation by the Greeks resulted in the Turkish people fighting by forming militia forces in the west. After the resistance started in the south, the struggle of the Turkish people also started in the west. On the rise of occupations and the desperation of the Istanbul administration, Mustafa Kemal understood that something had to be done. And for that, on June 22nd,
The fight were done
answer
on
circular was
15
issued by
May.
Yeah.
Gulf or by Commander Rafet. by
But
the
then he
front
came
of
to
the
back.
Kazım
He came back.
Okay.
This circular was the first official document of the Turkish War of Independence. Now the people were openly invited to oppose the enemy, the Allies. Although the British
People
removed
were
Mustafa
openly
Kemal from
invited
his
to
post,
oppose the enemy.
couldn't prevent him
Like
from leading.
the common people were told that come
The war
and
was
join the
cancelled
army and
under
fight
the
against them.
commander
Against
of
them.
the Ottoman army. Mustafa Kemal and his friends
So
who
from
passed
Samsun,
Amasya
then
to
Amasya,
gathered a
and
compass
then
against
Erzurum.
the need to resist the enemy. At the same time, the commander of the Ottoman troops in Erzurum, Kazım Karabekir Pasha, stood next to Mustafa Kemal and was one of the biggest supporters. Mustafa Kemal passed from
Okay.
Erzurum to Sivas. In September, another
Then he came to
conference
Sivas.
with the participation of participants from all over the country, and a decision taken at Erzurum
They want to
Congress
conquer
gave
that
national
area.
identity.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
the Turks were determined to resist.
Do you see the places where other flags
The
are?
decision to
All
give
those
the
places
Turks
were of
army
Ottoman
Mustafa
Empire,
Kemal
but
opened
those
the
countries
National
seized
Assembly
it.
on April
Now they were
20,
planning to get it back.
and was elected president of the Anatolian government. The Turks
And
then
they are
rolled up
going
to
to
their
different
march
countries
to
of
maintain the
Ottoman
resistance
Empire.
with a regular army rather than militia. The Turkish War
And
of
there are
Independence was
Turkish
organized to
flags.
fight against the enemy on 3 different fronts. Regular troops in the east managed to defeat the
So
Armenians.
there were
while the
3
rest was
fronts
fighting
on
for the
which
regular
they
army
were
when
fighting.
its
You see?
occupation
Yes.
continued. Thus, towards the end of
Greeks
1920,
came here
the Turks secured the
and
eastern side.
Armenians get back.
At the beginning of 1921, while the newly organized troops under the command of İsmet İnönü fought with the Greek army, while the Turkish militia forces on the southern front harassed the French and the Armenians and brought
You
them
are
to
very
the point
brave.
of
Yes.
war. In July
Commander of
1921,
Ottoman
the
Empire.
Greek army defeated the Turks during the battles and threw them to the east of the Sakarya River. Now the Greek army
Oh,
was
so
financially
all that
and morally
place
supported
was
by the
gone
Turks.
from them.
Seeing this
Izmir,
as an opportunity,
Afyon,
the
Bursa.
Allied powers wanted to push the Greek army into Ankara and force the Turks
It's
to
too
accept
bad.
the Treaty of Sevres. Also, the withdrawal of the Turks gave them hope. Things weren't going too bright for the mainland government. The enemy was very close to Ankara.
And the
could
women
not
are
be
also.
Yeah,
stopped. Islamic
everybody
governments tended to see Ankara as
like
responsible
they
for
made
war.
those places
If the
empty and
Turkish
came to the
army
places
in
where there was
Anatolia
no
could stop
war.
the enemy, things would be worse for the Turkish state than calculated. The president of the Ankara government, Mustafa Kemal Pasha, took over the command of the
Okay.
army, and Battle of Sakarya, which started at August 23rd, ended
So,
with the victory
They are
of the
going
Turkish
back.
army on September 13th. This was a turning point for the
So they got some victory
After
there.
this
Yes.
great victory, the Italian and the French
They
realized
conquered
that the
one,
Turks would win
city,
the
I
war,
think.
and they gradually began
Oh.
to withdraw from Anatolia. The Ankara
Good,
government
good, good,
reassured
good.
itself with
So
its
Anatolia
Yeah.
was
instilled great
not besieged.
every
Urfa,
Salvador.
Antip.
The Greeks lost
Good.
the ability to attack after their defeat and went to defense to protect their territory.
They
But the
take
Turks
step
did not
gradually.
Yeah, so the Greeks, instead of offense, they came to defensive position. Ottomans were strong at that time.
And
Yes.
this time, they would fight to the end. On 26 August 1922,
Whoa.
the Battle of Dumlupınar started. The war ended on 30th of
So in
August.
1922,
with the
26th of
overwhelming
August,
victory of the
they
Turkish side. From
got,
this date, the Turks
Greeks
attacked
back.
a wide line and drove the Greek army towards the shore. On 9th of September,
And
So
They
they
take
were
their-
at the shore and every place was
and the Greek
gotten
army,
from them.
as the
And they
Turks
take their
followed,
places
got
back.
poured into the sea. After the withdrawal of the occupation,
Oh, so all other Greek soldiers were poured into the sea.
1922,
There was no place for
Peace
them.
agreement was signed between the Allies and the Turks. Thus, the War of Independence ended with Turkish victory.
You are
and
very
straits
brave
and the praise
soldier.
were given to Turks.
And
without
very
Yeah.
brave commander.
Mustafa Kemal Pasha, who led the people in this war, turned to diplomatic victories after lifting the Sultanate. Ultimately, the Republic was
Yeah,
They-
it was not a good
9th of October.
thing, but yeah, what can we say? He was a good army general, but the step was not good to get down the Ottoman
He was the
Sultanate.
first leader of this new regime and state.
They take back their countries gradually.
Yeah. They took all other places occupied by Greeks and British and French
Yes.
and Armenians, and yeah, it shows that how much Kemal Atatürk was able army officer who did best job in every part of the wars where he was fighting, like from Izmir, Konya, from Istanbul, Savaş, and Çanakkale. So he was doing everything and then getting places from Greeks till the Izmir. So all these things were done by the Mustafa Kemal Pasha. So he was a very great army commander. He was a remarkable army commander. But most of the people don't support the step that he did by taking down the Sultanate and then just considering those borders, his own the Turkish borders. So what we can say, hit the like button if you have liked this video, comment down below the links of other videos you want us to give a reaction on, and also tell us that how much you like this video. Subscribe our channel, hit the notification button so that you can get notification of other videos uploaded. We will meet you in the next video. Till that day, thank you. Allah Hafiz.